Hey, welcome back to the When Words Don't Come Easy podcast. I have a special guest with me today, and I am so excited just to jump in. But if you are new to the podcast and don't know me, my name is Andy Howard, and I am so glad that you're here. Today, my special guest is Dave Blanchard, dear friend of mine. And I was just about to tell Dave this a few minutes ago. I thought, wait, let's get this thing recorded so I can say it. But it's so funny. It was a Zoom just like this. Not funny at all. It was a Zoom just like this, where I never thought I would be where we're at today. It was on a long, if we take it way back, which we will, as a meeting with Dave that led to where we're at today. When the book, with the podcast, all of it would have never happened had he not helped me so much. And gosh, I'd fallen. I thought I was out of my depression state at that point, Dave. I really did. I met you. But welcome, first of all, and just go ahead and greet everybody, and we'll jump into this thing.
Great to be with you. Thank you, Andy. It's just so fun to see you with headphones and a microphone. This is so cool.
Well, it is so fun, and we've had so many Zooms together that I don't know, it still doesn't seem real to be on this side of it. Because when I first met you, as I said, I was broken. Just being honest, Dave. And Tiffany had been working with you, and she was like, "You really need to work with Dave. You need to reach out to Dave." And at the time, I did not. I didn't want to talk to anybody. Isn't that funny how it works? I wanted to stay in my bubble, away from everybody, because I was hurt. I was just in a bad place, just being, oh, it's been real. And when I came to you, and I just wanted to jump in with this, you had shared a dream with me that changed my life. I was ashamed. I was feeling beat up, broken. And you told me about a time, and if you don't mind sharing this with everybody, but you told me about a time you had a dream that you had died and you were facing judgment. Will you share that dream with the people? What you thought was judgment, but what ended up happening in this dream was so powerful that it rocked my life.
I have many, but I'm hoping this is the one that I died. And you go kind of through that veil to the other life, and there's the Lord standing there. And I shared with you, Andy, that in that moment, I had the thought, this is not going to go well.
Yeah.
The next thing, I'm in his arms, and he's holding me, and I wasn't expecting what happened. I got to witness my life in terms of all the good that I'd done. And it wasn't the big stuff. It was the little things. Sometimes a kind word to a cashier at a grocery store, and how that impacted their life. And they went home and treated their children different. Those kinds of things. And then the Lord pulled back and looked me in the eyes and said, any regrets? I had one. When I woke up, and I thought, no, I want to talk about it. No. Oh, I have the rest of my life to work on that one. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was so powerful.
About that one. I was thinking about the Chicago dream too.
That's another good one. Go ahead and share that. Yes, sir.
Dragging that white sack that's just full of something so heavy.
Yeah.
And the Lord said, David, let go of the sack. Yeah. And I did. Then he said, turn around and face the sack, which I didn't want to do. There's a reason why we drag this stuff behind us, right? So I turned around and he said, empty the sack.
Oh. And
I did. Stack of little silver orbs with spikes on them. And he said, pick up the most painful memory. I knew which one it was. I had never dealt with it my entire life. I'm like 50 something at this point in this dream. And I picked it up, and it was an experience I had living in Chicago, age 3 through 5. Parents, my dad was going to school, mom was working. They put us in the carekeeping of a couple who couldn't have children. They were pedophiles. And they took a whole lot more than they gave. And the Lord just said, anybody else suffering from a similar wound? And I said, yeah, Lord. and engrave this in your heart. I'm thinking, spikes, this is going to hurt, but it slid right in. Wow, I felt like a new person, because I always wanted to be someone else, somewhere else, doing something different. I did not want that experience. And we did that with every experience from my life. And he said an interesting statement that is not in print. He said, David, these are your Gethsemane. If you think about Gethsemane, when the Lord took upon those sins before he died on the cross the next day, and he said, this is what's prepared you to serve. Now, I didn't have these things happen to you. They've happened. And now your character is forged in the furnace of adversity. You know what pain feels like. And I said, yes, I do. He said, can you take it back? And I said, no. He said, if you'll choose to use those experiences as a rich resource to better understand what somebody else is going through, there'll finally be purpose in that suffering, joy in your journey, and much needed healing in your soul. Oh, it was just an incredible dream, because there was a man in the dream that when I turned to talk to him for the first time, I saw he was dragging a sack, and somehow I knew what was in it. And I thought, wow, that's how we're supposed to carry our life experiences, not as a burden, but in our hearts to use as a blessing to better understand what another person's suffering. Yeah.
And I love that, because me and Tiff would almost make a joke of it, not of this story, but we would make a joke of every time I was going to meet with Dave or she was going to meet with Dave. Because we would have this heavy burden, or we would have something that was happening. There was something going on in our life. And we would say, you know, Dave's going to say, he's going to say, oh, how wonderful, how great this is. Because you would always say, the reason this is happening to you is maybe there's someone else facing the exact same trial or the same situation. You're going to have an opportunity to minister to them or to help them. And I took so much from conversations like this. So I thank you for that. I do remember another thing when we first started, you used to tell us, lean into the pain. I love pain. And get comfortable with saying that, because pain is what makes you grow. And it's very similar to what you're talking about right there. It's all the hard times in our life that are meant to help others. Would you, I don't know, dive into that a little bit more, and how some of the negative or bad things in our life can be used for our good?
Well, you shared with me many things from your life. And I remember saying, Andy, what in the heck are you being prepared for? And here you are, your book, your podcast. It's just exciting to see this coming to fruition. It brings up one other dream, that I'm in a dream and there's a man standing on a cliff ready to jump. And the Lord says, go out and visit with him. So I go out and we have a conversation, and he turns around and walks back away from the cliff. And then I wake up, and it's like the Lord spoke to my heart. The time is not far off when people are going to be tested beyond their ability to withstand. I said, Lord, you promised you wouldn't test us beyond our ability. And he said, in righteousness, and the world is not righteous. And then he said this, and I remember saying this to you: the only people with credibility to walk out onto that ledge and help talk somebody away from it is somebody who has stood there themselves. And I remember welcoming you into the cliff community. You know that cliff.
Yeah. It's not easy going through it, any of our trials. And if you're listening out there, you're watching for the first time, maybe you haven't experienced these same trials, even what you've heard Dave go through. It's so tragic, and no child should ever experience that, and or depression or anything like that. It's some of the things I've gone through. Maybe you haven't experienced that, but whatever trials you're facing, they happen for a reason. All things happen for a reason, and who knows how you can help somebody with your struggle. There was something else that, man, there was just so many things, and we don't have enough time to get. I'll have to have you back sometime. But another one for sure that just throughout our journey that just really jumped out at me, and I loved it. And this was more for marriage, but I think it works for everybody. I mean, in every situation, is you said, what if we could lay down the need to be right? And I would love for you to dive into that. So many of our little arguments with Tiff and I comes down to Andy trying to be right or Tiffany trying to be right. Uh, could you help explain that to someone who hasn't heard this before?
Sure. Well, first of all, it comes out of a gift. You both have the gift to effortlessly think and vividly visualize, and so do a lot of other entrepreneurial type people. And when we visualize that vividly, the brain creates a mental construct, a new reality. It's a done deal.
Yeah.
And then we start sharing with someone and they don't agree. It's like they're trying to change history. So even if we're passive aggressive, no, please hear me out. We're in a world called systemic mathematics, all or nothing, right or wrong, win or lose, life or death. If I need to be right, your only choice, Andy, is to be what? Wrong. Yeah, that's the only other choice. And
sorry,
if
I muted myself,
wrong,
but yes,
if I make you wrong, then it's going to push your self-esteem buttons. And we're going to be in a self-esteem preservation conversation. Imagine being able to have an idea, but be able to just own it in my heart for a moment and listen to your idea, find good in it, verbalize it, bring down your wall of resistance and create collaboration. We teach this to corporations because in a systemic right, wrong, win, lose quotas world, sometimes we don't go to a higher level looking for good and even higher loving human beings.
Wow.
If we really love someone, it's like, do I love them more than my need to think pepperoni's better than sausage on a pizza?
Yeah.
Hopefully so. Hopefully so.
That is so good. And I wanted to dive in before we get too far off, but I saw that jersey when we first started. And you said there's a story behind that. Behind you, I see Pat Mahomes. He's a Texas guy, by the way. I'm a fellow Texan, and I know you live out in Utah. But I saw the Patrick Mahomes jersey behind you, and you said there's a story behind that. Would you mind sharing that story? I would love to hear more about that.
I've never shared this publicly. June Jones was the coach at SMU. They're in Dallas, and he called me one day and said, I'd really love to have you come and breathe into my team. I said, great. So we picked a Monday, and it was the Monday right after the Saturday where he invites, when he was there, he would invite all the sixth graders from the inner city school to come to the stadium, and he would pour the gospel into them, for a day. And even though it was very Christian based, the school system paid for the students to be bussed in because it changed their lives. Well, I came that Saturday morning and walked in, and there's Lee Steinberg. And Lee Steinberg, Jerry Maguire, the best-selling book, #1 Agent. I had the chance of doing his Habit Finder assessment 3 months prior, so I was delighted to see him. I said, Lee, oh, hi, Dave. What are you doing here? And he says, oh, I'm June's agent. So we spent the day serving. Then that night, we went to June's house, and we're sitting out by the pool, waiting for everybody to show up for a big party. And Lee and June and I were talking, and Lee had a very public loss of his license certification as an agent because of alcoholism. Very public intoxication at Steve Young's Hall of Fame induction, lost his certification and went bankrupt, and his life fell apart. And he just finished rehab. And he's living in a halfway house, and the book's ready to come out. We're talking, and the Lord said, you're supposed to help Lee raise the money to start his new practice. About that time, the phone rang, and it was a dear friend who was reporting to me that her cancer was back. It was very aggressive, and she probably wouldn't make it. And I got very emotional. She says, oh, don't cry, Dave. I win either way. If I live, I live in Jesus. If I die, I live with Jesus. I win either way. And we finished our conversation. I went and sat back down with June and Lee, and June said, are you okay, Dave? So I told him about the conversation. And June turned to Lee and said, Lee, Jesus is who he said he was. And it was a really precious moment. Well, shortly thereafter, I shared with him that I'd been impressed to raise the money for him. So we worked all the details out that afternoon. I came home, met with his attorney, didn't like his attorney, got my attorney, Sean Reyes, who's now the Attorney General of the state of Utah. Great guy. Went to the same school, knew Lee, loved him, to step in and do the legal work, and got him set up in practice. 4 years, tough years. And he attracts Mahomes, Patrick. Now, Patrick got it because Lee had all of his quarterbacks. There was a Sunday when half the quarterbacks playing were his clients. And I could have the laundry list of everybody. They're all the famous quarterbacks and Hall of Famers. They were all his clients. And he would say to them, the very first thing you do is you give back to your schools and the communities that helped you get here. 2, you start investing for your life after football, and then you establish a lifestyle. Mahomes loved that idea. 2 years in, he wins the Super Bowl. Of course, he's giving back rights. So 20 of us all got one of these. That's a special one. It's a jersey that's signed, but the whole thing is a very special one. And then at the end of the 3rd year, he got a $500 million contract. Yeah. I just keep that there. When I'm a Mahomes fan, he's an incredible athlete and an incredible human being. But I keep it there to remind myself, Andy, what would have happened if I didn't listen to that prompting? Yeah. Wow. There are some beautiful things that unfolded in my life, Lee's life, all the way to Patrick and other relationships that are now just an integral part of my life because of responding. And I just, while we're on the podcast, if I can just say, hey, those that are listening, are you being called to something? Are you listening? Are you willing to act? Because I told myself, who do I think I am? Yeah. To even make the suggestion. Well, I'm grateful that I did. Changed so many things in my life for the good. Yeah. So if you're getting a prompting, pay attention.
That is so good, because that leads me to my next point. I love how that's just a God thing, how he's setting all this up for me. And there's been so many people now asking, Dave, this is so cool, Dave. When I met with you, the very first thing we did, you said, this is easy. I told you I was kind of in a funk. I don't know that I was, 4 years earlier, I was in full state of depression, but I felt like I had gotten past that, but I was still not happy. Now, at this point, I had been happy. We had done very successful in our personal business, and I had some fun things, and we had success with money and got to go on trips and all the things. It was fun for a minute, but then I started coming back down, just not happy. And you said something very clear to me. So this is very easy. We got to find you a passion. We got to find you something that you can, start working towards again, because you don't have anything to work for it. You can only, it's fun to be retired. I guess when I came home from my other job to work with Tiffany and partner with her in our business. But after so long of getting to play golf or getting to do things, if you don't have a purpose, it wears on you. So you said we have to find you a purpose. We got to find you a passion. And I told you right in from the very first time we met on that, I said, this is easy. I know what I'm supposed to do. I had known for over a decade. I'm supposed to write a book. And so right away, and this is kind of a long question, I'm sorry, but I just want to get this out. Right away, I knew I was supposed to write a book. You said, well, let's figure this out. You said something, God can't drive a parked car. I wrote that down, one of your Davisms. So God can't drive a parked car, and it's true. I wanted to be used by God, but I wasn't doing my part. I wasn't putting in the work. I was, I don't know, I was just bored, just sitting at home. So God can't drive a parked car. So you said, how are we going to do this? Let's get structure in place. And so it's been funny now. So now the book has come out. There's been so many people coming to me saying, I want to write a book. I have a story I'm supposed to share. And now I'm able to pass on the same advice that you have given me. Just so neat, going full circle. So anyways, I don't know if this is a question or not, but I love how you bring out best in people. It's the Holy Spirit, it's the Lord. But you bring out the best in people. You really have that gift of just listening and hearing from God, and you act on that. What you just done when you feel a prompting from God, you've always, at least as far as I've known, you've always been obedient to follow, and I appreciate that so much about you.
Well, let's talk about you for a minute, because we talked about that, and you actually started writing.
Yes, sir.
I got that first chapter, Andy, and I read it immediately. I just set everything aside and read it. And I remember getting tearful. This is genius. I told you that, Andy, this is genius. And then we would talk about what's the next topic, and you'd pick the next topic, and then you just start writing, and then you'd send that one. From my perspective, I got to watch genius unfold. And I know how the Lord works in this. You know, He gave you the words, you have the experience, but you got to have a partnership with a power greater than yourself and getting words on paper designed to move people's lives. And I kept getting my life moved every chapter I got. Oh, sweetheart, you got to read this to Ramona. And it was just a thrill to watch. And I remember when we got to the end, you said, is there anything else? And no, that's it. We got it all out. You got it all out.
Well, thank you.
Jordan Loftus takes it and saved your voice, which I told you was critical. Yeah. Don't let anybody steal your voice, because you just talk in a very unique way. There's a humor that comes out in some of the most painful moments that gives everybody a chance to just look at something and laugh at themselves a little bit, because you know, as Og Mandino said, we're most challenged when we can't laugh at ourselves, right?
Yeah.
From my perspective, thank you for the nice things you said.
Well,
but from my perspective, I kept getting fed by the words you were writing. Now, I've helped people do this, and it doesn't always turn out like this. This one did. This one did.
Well, thank you. But it was very critical at the time. And so something else you told me that was so important, and you mentioned it there. We talked about structure, and then you said, because here's the thing, for years, for over a decade, when anytime anybody would ask me, like, my pain point, what is your pain point, or what, and I had always tied it down to Peyton, birth process, and finding out, all her disabilities, and that she's got 10% brain function, and they say, she'll never walk or be able to talk, all the things. And that was such a big pain point for me. But you said, would you be willing to explore, Mother Davism, would you be willing to explore this with me? And you said, what if it's, and I don't know how it came about. It took several digging, several questions. You're very good at asking questions. But at the end, you said, have you ever considered that it might be insecurities? May not have been that word, but that's what it came out. And it was the truth. That is something that I had been holding on to since, gosh, I was maybe 10 years old. I was born and raised in such an amazing family. My brothers are heroes to me. My mom and dad were pastors, and just closest thing to Jesus or to God, just examples of them. I mean, just really, really good people who loved people well and served people well. And so it was not that they were ever portraying that I had to be this level or whatnot, that I was trying to live up to what I felt like were expectations to be like them. And you taught me to just partner with the great I am every day. So you said structure. 4 hours a day, 8 to noon would be your time. You do your prayer time, you spend your time with God, and partner with the great I am and ask him to help you. And it sounds very easy. And there were some days where you do that and it just, as fast as I could type, I mean, the words are coming and we're going down with it. But then there were some days that you just, it was the consistency and saying every day is a work day. My Mondays or Fridays, these are my work days, and I'm going to write today because I'm a writer. That's what you taught me. and it helped me. It really did. So thank you for everything, and thanks for the compliment. That means the world to me. But if anyone is listening, I mean, as far as wanting to write, I would encourage that about one, creating structure, and then the consistency of it. The second thing I wanted to say is you're encouraging it from me. So it goes back to my insecurities. But I had this, I told you, for over a decade, I was supposed to write this book. And for whatever reason, it took until working with you to pull it out of me. And I also feel like it was God's timing, because now as I look at the world and after 2020 and all the mess that happened with, with the COVID, the pandemic, and just, worldviews in general, depression and things are at an all-time high. So I do feel like God's timing, even our platform that we wouldn't have had 10 years ago with our business and the people we've come in contact with, we wouldn't have had it. So I really feel like God's time is in this for now. But I did want to thank you for just everything that you have done to help me get to this point.
For anybody who's listening who wants to write a book, writers write.
Right.
Writers write. I spoke at a conference once with a group of several hundred people that said they wanted to write a book. And I said, how many of you write 2 hours a day? There wasn't a hand in the audience.
Wow.
How many write an hour a day? Maybe one hand. I said, I love you, but I must say, I think you want to be rich and famous. You don't want to write a book. Writers write. Now, I didn't want to leave them frustrated, but that's what I said to you. I remember telling you that story. Saying writers write. And then when you get the first sample and you go, and Andy can write, that was a relief, because you never know. A lot of people say they want to write a book, and it's interesting to a point, but it's not like this. This is one of those where if you were to say, why me? I think God would say to you, because you listen and you courageously write what I say. That's one of the greatest gifts you can have, to hear. And you hear. You beat yourself up for so many years, so tough on yourself. But the truth is, you could hear.
Yeah.
You could hear, and you courageously wrote what you heard. That's a partnership. When you can partner with a power greater than yourself, the great I am, with God himself, and the Lord is your friend, writing is just about as thrilling as it can be. Not easy.
No.
Yeah.
And it was, and you were exactly right. When the very first thing, a lot of this came from our first meeting. But you told me how therapeutic this would be for me, just getting to write. Who knows? Who knows if the book will ever come at that time? You said we're going to do all the things that could write a book, but let's just write. And it really was. There was so much, I don't want to say pent up inside me, but there was a lot of hurts that were still needed to be dealt with. There was a lot of it just was like I don't know, an opening of my heart. It just started bubbling out like it'd been pent up for decades. So I'm grateful for you, Dave. And I did want to say, because I know you would never do this, but if anyone is, you've been enjoying this podcast and you're liking what you're hearing from Dave, he's so grateful. One, he's the CEO of the Augmendino Group, and that with the Habit Finders, everything you guys are doing over there with you and your son Paul is an amazing group of people. So get plugged in there. He has wrote 3 books that I am aware of, phenomenal books. So how can they find those books? I know Today I Begin a New Life, it's one of them, and The Observer's Chair is another just phenomenal book. And the last one you told me right before we jumped on, I'm sorry I missed that. What was that?
It's a crazy word, equanimity, which means peace of mind. Equanimity, Conquering Mount Entrepreneur. They're all on Amazon.
Okay.
And a couple of years ago, I put down my calendar and narrated them. So they're all available on Audible. So you can get them there as well.
Well, that's awesome.
Talk to someone who says, I'm listening to your book I'm spending all day with you, which is really fun.
That is fun. And you know what? And I know you're kind of joking. I believe it's Mark Batterson who said this in his book, but there on his Audible one time when I was listening, there are so many people who would love to have your time that you're a very busy man. So first of all, thank you for doing this for us today. But would love to have your time, but you can't always share that much time with them. But if they buy it, this book on Audible, they can have 5, 6 hours, however long the book is. They get 5 or 6 hours. That's what Mark was saying with his book. So I thought that was a cool way of looking at it.
Oh, that's a great way. Thank you.
Well, I thank you so much, Dave. Again, I want to bring you back another time because I feel like there's when I think about Dave, there are so many other areas we could go. But I thank you for everything you did for Tiff and I personally, but for what you've done for us. You'll never know. You will never know what you meant for me. When I first met you, I was at just a very broken place, and to see this Zoom compared to our first Zoom is night and day difference. And I'm grateful for you, friend. And I just thank you for taking the time to jump on this podcast. And I think we'll wrap it up here. But do you have any closing thoughts that you would like to share?
Thank you for the journey. It was thrilling.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. And that's real quick. I will say that sparked another one. You told me this was very good. Fall in love with the journey, right? Because so many times we look for the mountaintop experiences, and those are great. I mean, and I write about that in the book. Those are great. They're those moments where you're on the mountaintops where they're kind of like God weeks. They're your celebrations. They're good, but true growth comes in the valley. And so if we fall in love with the journey, when we try to look for those mountaintop experiences, but we were never meant to live there, right? And so if we are always just waiting for the mountaintop, you're never going to enjoy it, no matter what you're doing. Oh. If you fall in love with the process of what you're doing and you love just whatever you're doing every day, you won't have to have that. The mountaintop experiences are very cool. Don't get me wrong, you're going to love them. They're going to happen, but it's not going to be a make or break situation for you if you fall in love with the journey. So very cool. Well, thank you, Dave, for being here. And we're going to sign off for this one. If you've enjoyed this, please subscribe and share it with a friend. I would love, the number one thing about this podcast is I just want it to bring hope and a flashlight of hope to people, whether they're facing dark times or whatever they're facing. I hope that this will be just a beacon of light for them. So thank you guys so much for being here, and we will see you next time. God bless everybody.
Thanks so much for tuning in. If this episode helped you in any way, it would mean the world to me if you would leave a review and share it with somebody else. Thanks so much. I'll catch you next time.